Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Testing Peers podcast. Today, we're going to be letting go. My name's Chris Armstrong, and I'm joined today by Mr. David Maynard.
Hello.
Russell Craxford.
Hello.
And the great Heather Reid.
Hello.
Now, banter. Heather, what have you got for us?
I'm interested in hearing about what is the most random or last minute trip that any of you have booked? Like, what I mean, like last minute. For me, last minute is probably 2 weeks in advance because I'm a planner. But I don't know. What about the rest of you?
Well, for me, it wasn't recent, but in my early 20s, I think I went interrailing and I did plan the trip. I knew what countries I wanted to go to, and I planned where I was going to meet up with people. And then at the last minute, I decided that I'd go around Europe in the other direction. So I still visited the same countries I wanted to go to, but in completely the other order. So yeah, that was quite unexpected, but it worked out in the end.
Cheaper?
It was the same price. It didn't matter because it was an interrailing ticket. So I was there for a month. So I just caught trains. But yeah, I was supposed to go down to Spain first, but I came back from Spain at the end, which made better sense for me.
Yeah, finish up in the heat.
Yeah, definitely.
I think Russell might win for the most last minute one.
Yeah, we were talking this before, and I was describing a time, I think, back in 2016. And I know that because I just found the emails. The booking, I was just checking my story. And I was at burnout stage of a project, and I'd been planning and I'd been looking at where to go, and I just wanted to escape. But I just kept going around in circles and not making a decision. I was in that couldn't make a choice type mental blockage. So I planned things, spreadsheets, all options and all the rest of it. Knew I was going to Thailand, but not what, where, when, how. And so I booked it the day before. So I booked it on the 2nd of September, and then I flew out on the 3rd of September. Because why not? Yeah, I went to Phuket in Thailand.
It worked out. Like that sounds like a pretty good way to escape from that project.
It wasn't the best trip. There was some slight hiccups on the way. I think that was the trip where I got there and I was staying in a hotel that was on an island. So part of the booking, and last minute, I booked a transfer included in the whole thing. But when I got on the flight from, I think, Dubai to Phuket, just before I got on the flight, I got a message to say that they couldn't do the transfer. So I got to Phuket, and obviously I couldn't get to the hotel that was on an island somewhere. So I had to stay a night in Phuket randomly before going out the next day. So it wasn't a catastrophe, but obviously for some people that would throw them wonky. Whereas to me, it was just like, well, if I can't transfer, then I've got no choice but to stay local, then figure it out tomorrow. So yeah, that was the worst that happened from doing something so last minute.
Has that experience biased you against never booking something that last minute again?
Nope. In all honesty, I've never done something quite as late as that. That was, as I said, sort of like, well, it was 36 hours ahead of flight sort of thing. I've done it a week before a few times. It's the decision making that I struggle with. So as in I will look and plan and I will plan and I'll plan and I'll look and make choices with hotel. I'll have a list of 5 hotels. Then it'll take me a week to get down to 4, then another week to get down to 3, and so on. So it's just the whole process. And then the need for a deadline, as in you've got to book now, otherwise you're not going, is often the kind of the overkill that kind of puts me over the edge. But I want best value, you say, I'm a Yorkshireman. So I want to make sure I get the best value deal at the last minute and all the rest of it. So I push the boundaries. Anyway, that's me. Chris, how about you?
Well, I'm married to a serial planner who wants to discuss things and put them in spreadsheets and plan the next 2, 3, 4 trips that we're going to take places. I personally suffer from decision paralysis quite often. My brain gets quite full of things, be them work or other related things, and I find it quite hard sometimes. Like, yeah, it'd be nice to go to this place, but I don't really mind where, as long as I get to do the nothing or the exploration, whichever of those things are. I would say probably the latest I've left something was when it was on myself alone, so my serial planner didn't get to assist me on those things. And it was expensible stuff for work. I was speaking at the Italian software testing forum in Milan, and I probably booked hotel and flights the week prior to going. I'm glad they were expensible because the hotel was more expensive than any hotel I've ever paid for in my entire life. So, few. But yeah, good planning would have been a lot more sensible. But I guess when there's just so much going on, I don't find it natural to just go and book something. Before I got married, I didn't take a proper holiday anywhere for a good 7 years. My passport expired. I was very, very sort of hobbit like, just in my little hobbit hole, sort of happy in my own little ways. But I've been coaxed back out and exploring the world again.
Heather, how about you?
I don't know, I think that I am a serial planner. So so I suppose probably one of the most last minute things we did was my husband booked us a trip he booked it last Christmas for this August. Doesn't sound last minute. We knew the city we were flying into and the city we were flying out of. We planned hotels in both, and that was it. We didn't figure out how we were getting from one city to the other until the day before we needed to do that transfer, which, as it happened, couldn't be done in the direct train route we thought we could because that was around the time of the Olympics and it was on the main train route from Germany to the Olympics in Paris. It all worked out fine in the end. We had a couple of transfers, but yeah, that's probably the most last minute thing we've ever done of like we knew where we were going, but what we were doing, where we were going to eat, how we were going to get places, we just figured out as we were there. It was kind of nice.
It's something I quite like winging it, but I think a bit of planning, a bit of research means there can be particular things that you want to do and other sorts. And sometimes
Yeah.
events happen that get in the way, right?
Like the Olympics, how dare they? Like it was such an unexpected event.
There we go. So hopefully by talking about this, we've been able to let go of some of that anxiety that we've had with these smooth transition right there, everyone. Welcome.
I might have given everyone fear as well of last minute holiday choices.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
can be
Some people
exciting. It can be
biting their
exciting.
nails.
So yeah, letting go. Has anyone got anything they want to kick us off with to talk about this?
I suppose I'm in a period of letting go again. I seem to end up here every couple of years where I transition from one career to another. Not that I'm a serial career switcher, but I came back to testing. But at the start of this year, I moved into an engineering team lead role. And it's been a bit weird to do that transition, not just the people management side of things, but the letting go of testing somewhat. I think Russell had some interesting points around that of like what actually is testing. So I'm still using a testing mindset in the role that I have. But yeah, I find I have to let go of certain things, like getting more hands-on with the code and things like that. That's not my role anymore, and that's a very difficult transition. It's a hard thing to let go of at the moment.
Do you think a lot of that's to do with not just what you're doing, but what maybe your identity has been?
Yeah. Oh God, that's a deep question. Because yeah, that's actually a really good point. Because when I moved back into testing, I did find it really difficult of figuring out who I was and what my identity was when I wasn't Heather from Ministry of Testing anymore. It's kind of like, who even is Heather? What does she do? Yeah, I don't have to think on that one a bit, Chris.
You've
Thanks.
highlighted something that because I thought so a couple of years ago I was a line manager of 32 people and it was becoming unsustainable, and so I had to make the decision to sort of let go and have other group leads to support me, and I can completely get what you were saying, Heather, just then, because I about losing your identity. For 4 years or 6 years I had been the pure group leader. I'd been the one that had brought this group forward. They'd been shaped in exactly what I do, and then I had to share it, and I had to then share responsibility, and my identity has changed. It's taken a very long time in order for me to actually get back into what is it other than that I'm actually good at. I don't think I'm fully there yet. I'm still struggling at times, but that transition period can be quite traumatic, because especially if you've been there for a long time or whatever. I was going to say it must be difficult when you retire as well. If you've been busy all the time, and then suddenly stop. Actually, then what do you do with your time? So we should consider that going forwards as well, about letting go. But we can talk about the present at the moment.
It's hard letting go, like really hard. And like Heather mentioned, kind of different roles and different things. I've done similar. As in, I temporarily was a delivery manager rather than tester, but then I went back because I realized that I enjoyed that, and part of what I was doing as testing was managing the delivery, to be quite honest, and still is to some degree. But I actually enjoyed the angle of testing far better than I did any other angle. It's almost the persona of a tester. I kind of associate myself with more and felt more comfortable. Felt it fitted me better. It fitted my personality to a degree, that I'm a questioner. It's what I do, and I'm always looking for feedback and improvement and how we can make things better, which I think fits quite nicely into kind of a testing worldview. But I struggled not to have that tester hat on, looking after teams of people that included testers. I'd always obviously be drawn to where it is, and it's hard to kind of let go. It's hard not to advise. It's hard not to spot something and let people learn from their own mistakes a little bit. It's like, it must be hard being a parent. Thank God I'm not. That's all I'm going to say.
I was thinking, though, even to that feedback piece, I think that's something that I'm struggling with at the minute, which is part of the struggle of the letting go. Because when you're an individual contributor, for me at least, I found it really easy to, like, when it comes to review season or whatever, really talk about the impact of my work. And I would have plenty of feedback from people that I'd worked with about the impact of my work and how it had helped them or whatever. Whereas in the team lead role, I'm finding it a little bit trickier to figure out. Like, that feedback is still there. It's like you can see it in when you support someone on your team and something clicks for them, and there's personal development there for them. But if I'm finding that feedback piece a good bit of why I'm struggling with the letting go.
We've talked quite a lot about, sometimes our choice of letting go, but sometimes there are projects that, especially in consultancies, can suddenly be budget cuts, or different directions. And there are very different consequences for that, because it's unexpected rather than our choice. And actually, again, that can be psychologically difficult and different. And it might be quite interesting to find out how do you, as a manager, we obviously support people, we can support people as part of that, but also how do we cope with that? What are our coping mechanisms of coping with that sudden transition of change? Do we cope?
We can get quite deep with these quite quickly, but I think I've certainly worked on projects when the cord's been cut very quickly, either through budget constraints or pandemics happening. It's quite hard, even if you can accept reasons for why things have happened, for you to sort of come around to not seeing things through to the end. I think I mentioned before that for me, a lot of jobs, I mentally commit to do the whole thing, and if I can't see it's possible for that thing to be completed, the example I've given on a previous podcast would be like doing the dishes. Like, if I can only do like 7 dishes in the amount of time I've got, I won't bother doing those 7 dishes. I'll wait till I've got time to do all of them. Similar things can be the case with certain projects. Like, you must commit to do this amount of work in this quarter, and you know you've got no chance of doing it, and that's one thing. So mentally being prepared ahead of time to not complete something is different to when you're fully bought in. You know what's going to happen. You know that I'm going to be doing this at this point, this at this point. So and so over here is going to be doing that. So and so over here is going to be doing that. budget's been signed off, we're going to be able to recruit these sorts of people, use these sorts of tools, and then no. It's very hard to sort of come around to those things, even when you rationally talk about it and understand why. Because when you commit to something, often in my case, I fully commit mentally and all these things. So to not see the end can be really difficult. I know there've been jokes in Big Bang Theory where Amy's trying to take Sheldon and she stops at songs before they finish. She stops dominoes before the final one falls, and all these little bits happen with like the Jack in the Box, but they never finish the whole thing. And it is a real trigger for people to deal with, and achieving closure in the exact way that those things happen isn't always going to be possible. But I think as a manager, being able to empathize with your team when that's happened might mean we have to find another way that we can close that door so that they can feel like they've achieved that thing. Because there's a feeling of failure, even if it isn't on you, when something doesn't happen. Being positive and productive and proactive is something that's really important to us in the workplace. And so there needs to be that sort of discourse. You need to understand how people are wired to do this. I had a project that I didn't get to finish on a particular it was strategic implementation in one place, and it cut me and it hurt for a while. My next project, I got to do pretty much the same thing and see it through. And while I was working with different people on a different project, I was able to achieve that closure because of that thing. But not everyone's that lucky.
No, and that's a tricky one actually as well, because it's something that we've had at the moment where we'd planned to work on a significant piece of tech debt with the team. And then it was part of our planning for this quarter, but other issues have cropped up. It's deprioritized. And when I had to say that to the team, the look of disappointment on their faces of what do you mean we can't do this? And I said, look, I took the best approach I knew how of I'm just as disappointed about this as you are. Honestly, I am. I don't agree with the decision, but this is the decision we have. I went away. I took a bit of time to figure out closure or what it was that was bugging me about it the most. And I realized that actually it was the amount of planning that we had put into it that felt like it's going to be picked up, later. But that planning felt like a waste of everybody's time. We'd had all these calls, we'd had all these discussions. I kind of figured out a bit of a workaround around it for now. Not something we can dedicate the several weeks we had planned to it, but an hour each week instead to this project, and trying to give the team a bit of ownership of it while also somewhat getting closure. Like it's not something that's going to work every time this happens, but I feel like for this particular thing, it helps them to see that I do feel the same as them in this. They raised all these valid concerns about why we need to still look at this, and they feel heard now. And I think that's even part of the closure too, and the letting go when you don't feel like you've been heard. And we even get like you get that as testers as well. When you said, this bug it's going to cause issues in production, and people are like, it's fine, and they ship it, and what? This is affecting 10,000 users? Well, who could have predicted this? And you're in the corner like, hello, me?
Read the email.
Yeah. This is even not getting closure with that, or like letting go of that too, of and I really want to say I told you so, but I can't.
You're a braver person than me. I probably would still say I told you so. In a politically correct way. It's interesting because obviously we're moving to a world of adaptability. It's what we kind of all seek, people who are adaptable to situations, agile, that context and so on. It comes with a cost, as you say, letting go. Change isn't free. It causes fatigue. It causes mental stimulation, mental challenges and things. It's hard to let go. Your brain doesn't do it as easily as a paper decision, I think is kind of the way I look at it. So you do have to manage that change. You do have to manage the way in which people let go of things they commit to. Because it may only be a short-term commitment. It may be a flexible commitment. But some people, don't think flexibly. Some people are true or false. We're doing this. We aren't doing this. There's no grey. Some people can live in that grey, but there's still feelings get hurt. How disappointed are we? If friends cancel a night out, it's little things, but we have to let go of the fact that it doesn't happen. And all these things impact us because we've got emotions. We aren't logic machines. We're emotional beings of complicated. So it's hard to let go of, be it major things like being a tester previously and things like that, or even minor decisions on whether this bug fix, yes, it's going to get fixed. Oh no, actually, deadline's important. The other thing took longer. We won't fix it. All those things we have to kind of nurture people, support people to understand, including ourselves. And I think probably ourselves is often the hardest one of all because it bites, it hurts, it is emotive in many cases, certainly with projects, because you're putting your work, your passion. I'm the person that commits, like Chris, to my work. I care. So when things don't go the way that I'm trying to achieve, and it is hard for me to let go because I am invested. Probably, I'm not a mercenary. I am invested in the solution, be it right or wrong.
Mm.
And that's harder to let go. The more detached I can operate as, the more flippant and I can be with things, decisions.
Change is a really interesting one, isn't it? Because if change is something that happens to you, it's a lot harder to deal with than change that you're actually driving and a part of. And so I guess the one thing, if we have the ability to do, is if change is coming about, it'd be to include the people who that change is happening to, make them a part of that change. It's for me, understanding the context, the whys, being a part of shaping that change makes things so much easier to deal with than just having it happen to you, blindsiding you, pushing you off, making you feel like you've wasted all these sorts of things. If you've got more rationale and understanding, if you've got more inclusion into that change, I personally feel it's a lot easier to come to terms with that change happening. It's the blindsiding that I think, for me, I find the hardest to deal with.
And I think that goes back again to Heather's point of listening to people. You know, it's all to do with communication and how it's communicated, what it's communicated, the timelines of it communication. And I know that sometimes that can't happen. Sometimes, you know, you wake up in the morning and a company might have gone bust or whatever, and that is completely out of your control. There may have been signs, and hindsight's a wonderful thing, and you might have thought, all right, then if I'd only taken a bit more notice. The other thing I was going to say was in testers, you know, we often are very invested in it. We understand the product, you know, the context of the product, where it's going to be used, how it's going to be used, often how the users are actually going to use it. So it's integral to what we're doing. So actually letting go and having that ripped off like you know, like a plaster is quite a difficult thing. And it's the same as anything, is when we do let go, it's the fear of the unknown. What is next? What are we letting ourselves in for? You know, it can be changing jobs. It can be, as I said, letting go of my group. It can be taking on a new challenge. Is the grass actually greener? Are we able to do the job? Does my imposter syndrome allow me to make that change in order to do that? And again, let's go back to sometimes things are forced upon us and sometimes we have that choice. In my life, I was made redundant at one point, and that was one of the best things that happened to me because it opened the door for me to recognize myself as a tester and go down that path as a tester. And if that hadn't happened, I think I would have just continued sort of muddling through a bit of development and things like that. But actually, it really formulated the next stage in my career by being forced into that position and trying to find a new job. Change and letting go can actually be sometimes very good.
That ties into something I remember. It was a talk I went to years ago at B-Sides in Dublin, pre-COVID, but it was by a guy who works in the security industry, and he sort of said that, you know, testers and people who work in infosec, their brains are typically programmed to always think about the worst case scenario. What happens if the user does this? What happens when the system goes down? What happens when this data is leaked? And that also translates then into things like career progression or changing of projects. Our brains get so used to, in our day jobs, thinking about what's the worst thing that could happen, that even in the best situation, our brain is thinking, I wonder what's the worst thing that could happen here. which is, I suppose, does make it a bit more difficult to let go when you're like, I wonder, like, if we don't do this thing, could the system fall over? And you probably could. What happens if it does? And then it becomes more and more difficult to let go of that thing because your brain just starts thinking of all of these what ifs.
This is why we like to do things like be risk informed with things like risk storming and stuff like that to try and
Yeah.
come up with ideas and mitigate and plan for these things, because then we're in a better place to react and change. Because I think, to Russell's point earlier, adaptability and stuff is super important these days, because we don't know everything that's going to happen, but we do know that there are ways and means we can do to mitigate some of them, or practices we can have to be in a better resilient position to adapt and change. I don't think there's any one magical fix to these things. We can't hide and say, well, we couldn't possibly do that, because we'd never do these sorts of things. Because if we did that, we'd never achieve anything. No one would invent anything new. No one would see exciting new things. There'd be no more experimentation. We'd still all be using MySpace, and it'd be a dreadful, dreadful time. But it's really interesting from the perspective of changing careers and finding your identity. Like we've talked a lot about finding our identity in testers and the people. You are my people. I find a home with these people and these things good. Like, we cried when Twitter became terrible, and we found that place where we were with people. That was really sad. And when other things sort of cancel or move and shift and change, we have to move with the times, and our identities are going to change. I don't know how many school friends you're still close with, people that you probably thought you were going to be close to forever. It's not so many, which is sad, but we move, we change, we evolve over time. We did an episode 4 years ago on what we thought testing was going to look like in 2030. I guarantee that's going to be wrong, but it'll be fun to look back at it. But also, testing is going to change. What testing does in the shape of AI, in changing automation, tooling, how organizations want more or less, or they want everyone to do all the things or no one to do any of the things, that's all going to change. So how can we be best placed for how we are going to feel like we still belong to something and still have a purpose?
I'm gonna forget the key points. So I would just suggest when the recordings are live from ShipItCon in Dublin, that people should probably watch the talk from Charity Majors. It'll be live on YouTube. But she had some
Write the notes down.
she'd some I can't write as fast as I think is the problem. I don't handwrite as often anymore. And I wasn't there with my laptop where I would type faster. But yeah, there was talk about adaptability and change and AI and where developers and testers and all of us fit in this. And it's like, well, we're still going to be needed. But yeah, essentially my takeaway from it was that if you still maintain the mindset of curiosity and questioning and exploring, which are all the traits of excellent testers, that there's definitely still a place for you in the world of AI. It's because you're willing to learn and adapt and explore in it. I'll definitely be watching the talks back because I always have to watch a talk 3 or 4 times to take everything away from it that I'm going to. But yeah,
If we find the links, we'll definitely put them in the show note.
yes.
I'm going to change the tone, I guess. What are we most proud about letting go? Because we looked at the negative side of letting go, the challenges, but actually it's a positive thing sometimes letting go of things we shouldn't keep hold of. So is there any examples, any memories of things we've let go and actually yay rather than nay?
Yeah, I think I do. Hopefully, this hasn't been the case for a lot of people, but I've worked in toxic workplaces where there have been narcissists, people who are very much out for themselves and as an individual, places where people have written magical codes to obfuscate their own code so no one else can edit or read the code themselves, because they want to keep themselves in a job for all these times. Lots of really bad toxic practices, bad man management practices, bad project management practices, shaming people publicly.
Not talking about yourself, Chris.
No, well, quite. But I would have lost count of the number of times people like that have ruined evenings of my life nights sleep where I've woken up in angry sweats, where I've not been able to concentrate on other things because I'm so frustrated, so angry, so upset with the situation and not knowing how to deal with them. Every time I've been able to let go of them, and there's goodness knows there's not one situation to deal with it. You've all heard me complain about various different things down the years. But being able to move past those things, I know that I'm stronger, better, wiser beyond those things. And the pride comes from knowing that regardless of the situation that you're in, I've come out stronger, knowing that I've now got this additional caveat to bring into new workplaces where I can identify those things and call out those bad practices, knowing that I'm now a more experienced person who maybe has a more listened to voice, and to go, no, that stuff needs to get shut down. That can't happen anymore. That's a bad thing. I know that, yeah, I've got biases that I'm baggage that maybe I've still got that informs that, but it's no longer ruining my life. Those things, and I want to protect other people from those things happening. And I would say I'm quite proud of that, that as a manager, I've been able to take that and at least hopefully help people feel that the environments with which I create are safer spaces, the places where we can grow and encourage rather than shoot people down and shame them. I'd probably say that's the thing I'd be most proud of.
Yeah, something you said there's sparked a memory of a conversation I've had over the past couple of weeks where I was very upfront with someone. I was like, look, I don't want that thing going out. At the end of the day, I have a stronger say in that now than I did when I was a tester. But the person's like, I just don't get why. I paused for a minute and thought about, well, why do I feel like it shouldn't go out? And why are they feeling like I'm being irrational? And I said, look, honestly, I'm biased. I'm biased here because this is a situation that just happened 2 or 3 months ago. And so that has biased my thinking in this to be more risk averse. That's why I'm saying no. And they were like, oh, okay. I see where you're coming from. That's a really valid point. My counter to it is this. So let's meet somewhere in the middle. So I would say, off the back of what you've just said, Chris, I'm quite proud of now having much more awareness of why I'm struggling with letting go in certain things, or why my historic experiences, how they impact where I'm at currently, and being much more upfront with people about it. Of, look, I'm saying this because of these reasons. Can you see my point of view now? I'm quite proud that now I feel like I'm in a better place to be more honest about that. And that ties to your point too, Chris, of those previous experiences make you feel more confident to say that. Like when you're new in the industry, you maybe don't always feel like you can say that. But when you've been through a couple of different role changes or management changes or buy-overs or whatever it is, they all give you those experiences to kind of bolster your reasoning a bit more, I guess.
Yeah, I think for me, sort of letting go. Sometimes I struggle a lot with letting go. Sometimes I'm a bit sort of blinkered and want to get things done. However, there are times, and we've mentioned it before, in sort of delegating, when you delegate something and you allow someone else to take over what you've done, they can actually take it in a very different direction to what you've done and actually can make it a lot better. And actually that can be very gratifying. You may have come up with the initial idea, but actually for it to be taken and grow into something else that's bigger and better than what you had envisioned is very gratifying, and actually shows me, that sort of being a bit more humble of actually that was a great thing and they've done a great, and saying to them that they've done really well with having been delegated to. So I think delegation is key, possibly, to doing good.
So two spring to mind for me. One a bit along the lines of Heather's, I think. I remember articulating really strongly for not releasing a product because it was buggy, and I mean buggy, bad buggy. Had to go to kind of like someone who's like 3 or 4 rungs higher up, because it was a political decision to release it, but I wanted to make sure that they understood the risk of that. So I articulated my case, and they said, I get that. And I get that for the next 6 months, we're going to be fixing the problems. And it's going to not be useful. But unfortunately, for political reasons, for these reasons here, I can't go into them, unfortunately, here, we have to do this. And because the person took the time to listen to me, to hear me out and to do that, it was easier to let go of that. The next 6 months of pain was frustrating, but it was a choice. And to be fair, they were true to their word about not piling on lots of other demands at the same time. So they gave us a little bit of space to deal with it. But that was kind of one. And the other one, which I think is very important to me, was Chris talks about toxicity. I was working in a place that was a bit toxic, and I was building a team, and I love that team. It's in building capabilities, starting to form things, teaching what good testing was like, building something stronger, better, improving it, influencing people, helping people grow. But because of this sort of senior leadership toxicity, it just wasn't a place that I could stay. So I started nurturing and building, and then I had to leave. And it was really hard to let go of that situation. Positively, I landed on my feet. And in the end, a lot of those people did too. But it was hard for them because kind of I was the one steering that ship. But a lot of them found different places. I jumped before the ship almost sank in some ways, which was good for me and for some people. But I always feel a bit of remorse. So not quite as positive. It was positive for me, not for those around me. But sometimes you have to make the choices that are right for you in lieu of the consequences to others. Ultimately, these are jobs. These are people, though, still. But we still have to do what's right by us, ultimately. I think sometimes it's really hard to remember that you're a human too. As a leader, you sometimes forget you'll put everyone ahead of yourself. And it is okay to let go, to be letting go of those things. Choose, as I said, stay and fight, but not to your own mental health diminishingness.
Well, thank you for that positive end to this episode. Well, vaguely. It's time for us to let go of this episode. Don't roll your eyes, Chris.
I think that deserves a round of applause, in fact.
I'm only jealous. I didn't come up with it.
And thank you very much for listening. And thank you for Heather and the other two co-hosts for a really great conversation.
The other two, thanks. I said the other two.
You're thanking yourself now, are you, David?
Yeah. The way that you went, and the other two, was just like, yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Heather, for your contribution, and there were other people there.
Yeah,
and the lads.
Yeah, and those people I have to deal with.
You're stalwarts, you.
Yeah, we're part of the furniture. Yeah. Thanks. Keep digging.
Anyway, going on to more positive things, we have PeersCon 25 being held in Nottingham. The committee has been released, and also there is a call for papers until November this year. This episode will be coming out before that time, so please do check out peerscon.com for more details and think about how you'd like to speak if you'd like to, and join us in Nottingham in March next year. Also, you can reach out with us by email, contact us at testingpeers.com, or help pay for us through Patreon. I don't think we've mentioned that for a long time. Or you can interact with us, probably most likely through LinkedIn. Or you can listen to all our previous episodes. We have 115 plus that you can listen to our back catalogue on your favourite streaming service. So thank you very much for listening, and hopefully you'll join us next time.
For now, it's goodbye from the Testing Peers.
Goodbye.